Welcome to Season 2 of Under the Sisterhood. Over the 31 days of March, we are celebrating 31 Women's March of Voices during Women's History Month. We will have intimate conversations that will uncover each woman's superpower and find out how they use these superpowers to help other women. That's 31 days honoring 31 women and their superpowers. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all that they do in our world. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today, I'd like to celebrate Tess de Rooj on International Women's Day. Tess is a daughter, sister, friend, activist, feminist, writer, researcher, lover of nature, and co-founder of This Is Gendered, the first feminist online encyclopedia. She believes that everything is gendered. The encyclopedia is an ongoing process to prove this claim. Together with her team, Tess aims to describe the gendered workings, histories, and aspects of all things that make up our world, from everyday objects to institutional biases. Next to This Is Gendered, Tess works at the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Her interests lie at the intersection of gender and health, having studied medical philosophy and anthropology at Cambridge University and political science in her hometown, Amsterdam. Welcome, Tess.
Hey, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your beautiful introduction and, of course, for having me here. I'm super excited to be talking about themes that we both care a lot about on your platform and on International Women's Day. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be getting under the hood of you, because everything you're doing is sort of like a culmination. It's just wonderful to give it the time and space on today, International Women's Day. So why don't we begin? I mean, this is the biggest question. This is our life question. Tell us your story, Tess.
Okay, I'll try. So if I'd look back at like little Tess, I see this super curious child, very curious about the world around me, and my dad is an anthropologist, so he studies humans, he studies people, and I loved talking with him about all the things I observed and that I figured maybe weren't working so well for a lot of people. So from a young age, I was just very intrigued by this question of why does inequality exist, and what does it mean for people who I wouldn't say suffer from it, but who have to face inequality. So I just started like reading about it, talking a lot about it. I used to be a very opinionated child and started looking for ways to make impact. And at the moment, I do that through This Is Gendered. You mentioned it in the introduction. And I just want to bring up This Is Gendered now because it is a feminist initiative, and that is like one ideal we have in common, but also because This Is Gendered is very much about crediting the knowledge that comes with lived experience and staging subjective stories. And I just find it very important to legitimize individual experience and recognize that it deserves more attention to complement objective forms of knowledge. So that is something like I as a person feel very strongly about, and that I try to do in my work for This Is Gendered at the moment.
So can I ask a question about that, if I may? So this is great. Tess is the co-founder of This Is Gendered. I'd like to talk a little bit. I mean, it's wonderful. You were curious as a child. This curiosity on equality and asking all these questions and debating, like at what point? So you went off, we know you went off to Cambridge, you studied this. At what point did you begin to think about and imagine This Is Gendered? Like, what was that moment in time? Did something happen? Were you with a friend? Like, what happened to give birth to this? Because it's a pretty amazing platform. For so many different reasons, but I'd love to understand how you got there, your story about founding it.
Yeah, it was one very specific moment. I was with my co-founder, Alina Carlson, a Norwegian friend of mine. We studied together and we met up at a museum in Amsterdam. in the summer of the COVID pandemic, so summer 2020. And this was sort of during, a little bit after the Black Lives Matter protests in the US, but also in Europe, in the Netherlands. And, you know, I think we can all remember how tough these times were, how just emotionally taxing. And we had had lots of conversations with people about inequality. And some were just very, very frustrating, I would say, not very satisfying, because we lacked concrete examples to speak about what inequality means in our lives. The conversations remained very abstract and very academic as well. So we wanted to find a resource where we would gather a lot of tangible examples of inequality in our life. And that is what we do at This Is Gendered.
That's amazing. That's really an interesting way of putting it. And I think it's easy to think of something conceptual and theoretical and academic, but putting something into practice and tangibilizing it is really amazing. And in particular with this subject, because there's a lot of talk about it, but I think what This Is Gendered allows us to do is see the action in it, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm happy that you say that. Yeah, that's what we try.
So tell us more about your story. So you've been on this journey of life.
Yeah. And I think also, like, within my studies, I tried to make this whole passion about inequality more concrete. So I went on to study medical philosophy and medical anthropology, as you mentioned, because I'm just intrigued by health and by how the body functions and how what that means to us. Like, being healthy is really a prerequisite for living a worthy life. And yeah, then at the moment, I work in international relations. As you mentioned, I work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And there is so much interesting stuff going on there. The Netherlands is launching a feminist foreign policy. Super fascinating to sort of see that unfold from so close by. And yeah, I think that in a nutshell is my story.
Tell us what your job entails at the foreign ministry. Like, what are you actually doing there? And are you able to employ the work you're doing for This Is Engendered? Is there any, integration, if you will, or?
There used to be a very strong integration because I started my time there as an intern in gender equality and women's rights. So I worked a lot on gender mainstreaming in foreign affairs, like to make sure that gender equality is part of trade policy, environmental policy, you name it. Worked on women, peace and security as well in conflict areas, gender-based violence a lot. Very depressing, but super important work. And then I actually switched positions after my internship ended. And now I work as a so-called governance transparency advisor. So I work on the Freedom of Information Act. And this is like a very different field of work. Also interesting, but I do miss working on gender equality, which is my big passion.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds interesting. It all sounds interesting. And you're so young in your journey of life, I forget how old you are, but I think the beauty of this is every bit, it's like little cookies. You have this trail of knowledge you're picking up and experience. Back to your comment about these lived experiences, and This Is Gender. That's what you're doing with even sort of the slight pivot within foreign ministry. So what are your days look like when you're working on This Is Gendered, like as the co-founder? How are you experiencing it? What are you doing in that capacity?
Oh, Elizabeth, like there is so much going on, and I learned so much that I had not expected at all. So in the beginning, we did a lot of writing because we are a feminist online encyclopedia, which consists of written entries. Spent a lot of time doing research and writing these sort of like snappy pieces. We want them to be very accessible. And over time, we started doing more social media outreach. So there's also a lot of designing going on, as well as some interaction on social media as well. But I have to say, we have a fantastic team of 8 volunteers now, and they've taken over a lot of that work, which is amazing, and I thank them for it. Currently, I do quite a bit of finances. We just ran a crowdfunding campaign last September, September 2022. It was pretty successful. It's just amazing to sort of like see the support. And yeah, that's an overview.
That's it. It's exciting. Yeah, there's so many facets to running a company and a startup in particular. You wear many hats. You wouldn't think that, but again, it's great, knowledge and experiences to be learning. How do you imagine as this is gendered continues on? How do you imagine it scaling? Like, what do you see the future of it like, and the effects of it on women and genders in general? The conversation, if you will, on equality. What do you imagine it doing for people?
We founded This is Gendered with the aim of facilitating, but also normalizing conversations about gender, intersectional feminism, and sexuality as well. What I would want for women and people facing intersecting forms of discrimination, apologies, is that they face less resistance in difficult conversations about these topics. So I want them to be able to just like come up with very clear examples of how discrimination affects them in their daily lives, to more easily convince the person they're talking with that they're actually dealing with a problem.
I like that. That's awesome. And it's so interesting. That could be so massive, the impact of what you're talking about. One conversation affecting the next, affecting the next, affecting the next. And, by normalizing it, but I think it's also you're basically, in a way, changing the conversation so they can have it in a way that they feel comfortable, that they have tangible, examples to work with and have, and, back to normalization. It's like making it, I hate to use the word colloquial, but understandable, because I think that it's really hard. It's really interesting. I had another podcast with a wonderful woman, Dr. BCW, and she is taking on racial inequity. She's a doctor and she takes on racial inequity, and she does a lot of reporting. She's on like CNBC, what have you, as well as she's a practicing physician. Wow. But what she does that's really interesting, and I think this is an interesting parallel, is her whole approach is taking a really complicated subject, health, and she disarms people with taking on this conversation about health inequities, racial inequities as it relates to health, because she's able to tangibilize it, and she disarms it because she has such a nice way. Instead of taking on, there's so many inequalities. If you go out at angry, nobody's going to hear you. But if you go out and have a conversation and you're able to just very, calmly describe the scenario in such a way that people can take it in. And I hate to say making it palatable, but that a lot of times that's the difference, is disarming someone is making them open to hearing a subject that they might not want to or be closed to otherwise. So I think that by normalizing, by doing what you're doing, you're in fact doing that, right? Would you say?
I love that you use that word, disarming people, because I think that ultimately a lot of us share, broadly the same ideals. But it may be hard for someone to really imagine what gender inequality looks like for you. And in these moments, it's nice to indeed have an individual story to bring up, because individual experience is something you can't really argue with, and I think that also shouldn't really be argued with, ideally. And it kind of brings people together, like it makes it more easy to relate to one another.
Yeah, I like that word, relate. I think that it's not just disarming, it's making things relatable. A subject that people might not necessarily, the people who are experiencing the inequality, of course, are so keenly aware of it, but the people who don't experience it don't even have the ability to necessarily, their blinders are, or their filters, or whatever it may be, might be closed to that. And so by, making it more relatable, by using people's stories to share their experiences, and oh, I never thought of it that way, So you really are,
Right.
not just normalizing, but changing and making a conversation of what might not have been before. So it's fantastic. I mean, I just love it. I mean, it'll be I'm excited to see where you guys go with this, like how far, how it grows, like what other things you do to bring This Is Gendered to life. Like, are you imagining it beyond this online,
Yeah, we do. You asked this question. It comes at a timely moment, so to say, because we just had our strategy meeting, and what we do, the impact is very hard to measure because we just mentioned you want some sort of word of mouth, you want people to talk, but how do you measure the impact of a conversation? This is really, really tricky. We do know that we want to do more outreach, hopefully in a published book, like a published encyclopedia, a published like themed booklet. We would love to do a little bit of consultancy here and there, like a bit of advice, just to make sure that people with, I don't know, companies or whatever can use and directly implement our insights. So I think those would be two main sort of avenues for us, together with podcasts like these and panels.
No, you definitely have to get the word out on this. I mean, what you're doing is amazing. It's such important work. And, just so grateful to have this opportunity to have this discussion about it. I mean, I had never heard anything. I was having another podcast episode with Phaedra Haringsma, and she's telling me, I have these friends of mine who created this organization called This Is Gender, this platform, and she started to share. And then I went on and I'm like, wow, this is something. It's really, so I think the power of it and where you go with it, it's going to be really fun to watch. And I think, so I'm going to detour now. We're going to move along in your story. So you were a curious child, you're a curious adult, you're a change agent, you want to affect people's lives. I kind of can guess your superpowers, but what would you say your superpowers are, Tess?
Elizabeth, it's such a difficult question. It's almost mean to ask people this, but I
Mean.
think I had to ask around a little bit. And I think the sort of common theme is that I have a strong sense of justice and responsibility, and it motivates me to really push through. Yeah, that's the main thing. Sort of perseverance that comes with that. Having ideals and principles that I would like do a lot for to achieve.
That's beautiful. That's the ultimate. I mean, to have that in your 20s, to live by the principles. I mean, I would say that's like what, living in integrity. You have these principles, these values, and that's your guiding light or your North Star, right? I mean, and that you're willing to do anything to sort of achieve it. I'd like you to talk a little more about that, because it's a really like amazing superpower. It's the first time that I've interviewed 42 people now, talked about this as a superpower. And so I'm very intrigued by it. I want you to describe some more about your experience.
Yeah, I think so. I'm quite grateful. I think that I have this sense of justice because it makes things easier for me. It makes it easy to speak out. It makes it easy to put in a lot of time and effort when I'm working on a project that I care for. It makes it easy to stand up for friends or people that I care about. So I mean, sure, like I have doubts, but generally I do stand behind the things that I do. And indeed, it's like this North Star gives me like a bit of guidance. It functions like a compass. On the flip side, I'm pretty stubborn. And sometimes people disagree, and I care a lot about what other people think of me. Like I can be quite insecure. So sometimes, like for me as a person, that is tough. But yeah, overall, I'm quite glad with the guidance that it gives me.
You know, I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, your teens, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s. We all humans have insecurities in us at times. And I think that, you know, I can only speak for myself that I've worked very hard to sort of care less and less about what other people think. And it's funny because it sounds like a little like you, like walking this, having this sort of North Star, living in integrity, fighting for justice. I mean, I didn't necessarily fight for justice the way you have, because you're like on a mission. And I'm talking about in my younger years, but I always did the right thing. I always did the right thing. And I don't think in my 50 plus years on this planet, I've ever not lived in integrity. Like I pretty much have lived a life where, and always fighting for the people who need to be fought for, even in like crazy situations that could have gotten me carved up on subways, because I have this belief. But going back to your comment about being stubborn, and the reason why I'm saying this is that you know, we all have doubts at times, but to have that compass, that guiding, and it's a moral compass. You know, it's not just a compass about, it's doing the right thing is integrity. You know, having, and if you use that as a compass, that's your North Star, that's having morals and values, and making decisions and doing things based on that. And that's pretty spectacular to just have that at this stage of your life, and live like that. And all I can say is you have my complete support. I will be here until, you know, for many, many years, if you ever question that, because that's a characteristic that is incredibly admirable in a human being. So good for you. Now, as we go on with the story, how do you see superpowers to help other women?
Oh yeah, I think one thing I love doing is giving other people a stage, and that can simply be as easy as being in a meeting, seeing someone else, being interrupted. Like I tend to say something about that and give my, colleague the word. So that is just to make it very concrete. And then more in the bigger picture, I guess, I love sort of creating this sense of unity and shared passion and sharing a mission. Like, because I feel this mission so strongly, I kind of recognize it in other people as well, and love teaming up. So yeah, the joint effort is a big one for me. I think those are important. And like, we talked a lot about how feminism is also about lifting up other people. And more recently, like, I tried to start doing that more, like more consciously taking a step back, because being so convinced of your own ideals can also at least give me this sense of, oh, I want to do it all myself because I'm just so into this. And sometimes that's not necessary. Like sometimes someone else is more suited to take on a certain task or role.
Yeah, collaboration's like really key. And I understand that when one is so passionate about something, that it's hard to sort of let go your piece in it, because we get so consumed by what it is we're doing. But I think that's beautiful, like giving space. And I think to your point of, you know, this feminism platform, if you will, giving voice to other women and space to other women, and recognizing, because as a co-founder, even at your young age, your leadership and how you behave and how you bring all of these values and these superpowers to life, to bear, not only in your organization, but outside of your organization, is really, really important, because it defines who you are as Tess and who you are as a leader of an organization. So I think that's really wonderful, like to know that about yourself and to be living it. That's really, really something. So, I mean, this was not like on the questions to ask you, but here we are, it's International Women's Day. It's a really important day. You are the co-founder of This Is Gendered. I'd like you to give a message to women out there. What do you want to say? And please have at it. Have fun.
Thanks. I gladly take this opportunity to tell all women that, wait, not all women, but all people facing discrimination, marginalization, and oppression, do not doubt yourself. Be confident. If you have a goal, if you have a mission, go for it. I think we're facing a very large share of resistance, doubt, skepticism. Forget about it, just stay true to yourself and be confident. And I really think that people recognize that confidence and are more open to what you have to say, if you just throw it out there, what you have to bring to the world, basically. And I'm also speaking to myself here because I find this really hard. But let this be a way to hold myself accountable as well. Yeah, be confident.
So be confident and be accountable. I like that. And I think it's really interesting, Tess, because your generation, is so much more intentional, your generation's doing things differently. And it's really showing us. I mean, you're going through, when I think of all the different, intergenerational traumas, all the things that we're going through just on an individual and human level. And then I imagine the collective experience. So, and of course that deals with all the injustice of inequality and everything. Some sort of, it might be a little bit of a roundabout way of saying it, but I think that it's really, really important work. And I think that there's a consciousness with your generation that is very different than, say, my generation. And I think that so doing everything you're doing with this, and This Is Gendered, well, right now you're here, and I'm using my hands, audience, to say, in a smaller space, it's only going to grow, get bigger, because you are the catalyst for a conversation that hasn't happened the right way. And so you're changing that paradigm. So that's fantastic. And I think that the message to everybody, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about this.
I just want to say to you that our generation is standing on the shoulders of yours. And we need role models like you and people providing young people with a platform like yours to lift us up. And it's honestly just amazing to get a chance like this, So yes, there is, I think, a different approach. Like I share that that perspective, but we do come from somewhere, and we owe that to the people who came before us. I mean, you're a little bit older than me, not that much older.
I am that much older, but thank you so much for saying that, Tess. I do think I like the fact that you say you're standing on our shoulders. But I'll give you a concrete example. In my scenario, I was a real rebel, on the job side in my career. I've been a change agent in the respective career I've taken for a lot of my career, at least the past 15 years of it, which is big because, I was a working mom raising and stuff. But at the home, I was much more traditional or conventional, trying to do everything right to keep everything going. And so I wasn't as conscious. And so when I say that the role modeling I did was, I was a really hard work ethic. I was passionate about the work I was doing. Like my kids are on their own paths, doing their own things, because I want them, not because it's their lives, it's their journeys. They have to figure it out and they have to be happy. But as it relates to role modeling, you can be in the home and doing things, making making the house, cleaning the house, cooking, doing all the traditional roles that women do, not role models. I was role modeling traditional roles that women have in the house. Well, I was also a working executive, and I don't know that was such a great role model, if I were to be honest with you. So I think my learning, I'm having these amazing conversations with a lot of women, young and old and every age in between. And the learning here is just the openness, the transparency, the collaboration, the willingness to have a hard conversation for women. Like, you're having conversations, you are demanding things be different. And from your 20s, not from your 50s. I'm demanding it now in my 50s, but I wasn't demanding it in my 20s because I didn't even know how to have that conversation. And so I feel like there's a consciousness, a collective consciousness of both women and men, young men, that they're having, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think it's going to ultimately make the world at least potentially more peaceful. I don't know about better. I really don't know. It'll be really curious to see the direction that it goes in. But I think it is because of this and because of your generation.
That's such a beautiful observation. Thanks also for sharing, like your personal story and take. I'm curious as well what the future will bring us.
I'll be watching. I just want everyone I want happiness, but I think also that there's fulfillment, like working on this is gendered, bringing something like that to market, to the world, because you have a purpose. You're on a mission to change.
100%. It's so fulfilling. Yeah. And, we get so much back for like so many positive, kind responses, gratitude, but also critique. There's also so much scrutiny on our work, and I love it. Like, keep us sharp, tell us what we're doing wrong, what we should be doing better. That's how to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been an unbelievable conversation. I'm so excited to have had this opportunity to talk to Tess de Rooj on International Women's Day. You're doing amazing things with This Is Gendered, and I know you're going to do amazing things with your life. And I look so forward to watching you grow as a woman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. You're too kind, and have a happy Women's Day. Also to all women out there, but to you in particular.
Oh, thank you. Happy International Women's Day to all the women out there. And of course, to you too, Tessa. It's amazing. Women deserve recognition in so many different ways. They deserve to be celebrated, to be loved, to be cherished, to, all the things that, that acknowledgement for everything they do. So thank you for bringing that up.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Zach Slaff, and edited by Zach Slaff. The music is by Ayla Schaefer, her song, Rose.